What's good, everyone? Today I'm going to be reviewing Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Now, this movie, it makes me very sad because I was watching the bonus features for this movie, and it's one of those movies where you're watching this movie get made, and all the creatives behind it just putting in all their best effort, and they think, oh, what they're making is just going to be the best movie in the series yet. It's going to be the best ever, and you think you're like watching it, you're like, yeah, this is gonna be great, it's gonna be awesome, and then you see the finished product, and it fails on every possible level, and it's just so crushing. That's the kind of movie we're in for here. It's just a soul crushing movie, worst of the franchise, easily. Now, I watched the unrated version. I haven't seen the theatrical version. I only know a handful of the differences. I didn't really check what most of them were. But the ones I do know are different are actually, I would say the movie's better with them. Like there's some shots of the spaceship or some character moments that, I mean, they add a little bit. You go with or without them. That aside, what's the movie about? We get a direct sequel, direct follow up to the first Alien vs. Predator. Takes place like directly where the last one left off. It's the shot of the Predator, the dead one from the last movie, like laying on the bed on the spaceship, and then like the Predalien, or Chet as they call it behind the scenes, pops out of the Predator's chest and then gets loose, kicks out a bunch of predators on the spaceship, and then crash lands on Earth. And so that sets off a sort of distress signal. Some random predator who's on the predator homeworld sees it, and then he's like, okay, guess I gotta go to Earth to stop the spread of the xenomorphs. And then that's the basic plot. It's very simple, and the ideas here could work. They didn't. Just to compare it to the first AVP to explain why this movie just completely fails. I'm sort of gonna act like the first one is sort of a masterpiece. It's not. You can go see my review. I think it's good, but it's not great. But the first one, despite feeling contained, felt like an event. This movie feels very small scale in a bad way, where in the first movie, when I say it's an event, we're seeing the alien and the predator clash for the first time ever, and that's going to be huge. And they treat it like this big WrestleMania event, like WWE fights are throwing each other at the walls, tearing each other apart and stuff. It's a lot of fun, and it's contained. It's technically small scale, where it's like in this pyramid underground, but even then, it's an ancient pyramid underground. The thing in lore is designed just so the predator can fight aliens, and it's treated like this big deal. Our human characters down there are like professionals. You got some military, some Arctic explorers and stuff, and you feel like they can stand a fighting chance against the aliens or the predators, and they feel competent. And the characters themselves are just, I mean, they're not great, but they're have some mildly interesting aspects to them, some interesting character traits. This movie just fails on all of those same levels, where this movie is small scale in the way that we're like in a small town, and there's supposed to be this looming threat of the aliens are on Earth and they might get out and they might reproduce and swarm over the entire planet, but you never feel that. Like, none of the characters even know that the aliens are there for half the movie. The fights, nowhere near as good as the first Alien vs. Predator. You can't even really see most of them because the movie's so darn dark. None of the characters are interesting at all. They barely even have one character trait each, and they never feel like they stand a fighting chance because we're just in this small town with a bunch of normal people. Like, none of them are soldiers, professionally trained in any way or whatever. And so they're just sort of running for their lives until you get to the third act, where they randomly become action heroes. Beyond that, the movie is boring. I laughed at like one of the jokes. It's not funny at all, and it makes like references and homages to previous movies in the franchise, where you get like they recreate the shot from Alien 3 where the alien like sticks its head through the curtain. This time it's like the Predalien. And then there's a part where at the end the guy goes, "Get to the chopper," which every Predator movie seems to have the main character quote a famous Arnold line from the first movie, and it never ever is nearly as iconic. It's just like, make your own iconic line. And they just make these like references and stuff, and it just always feels hollow. It's like, why'd you do that? Make your own cool thing. And in plenty of ways, I have a lot of respect for the filmmakers for doing things like that, where they studied all the Alien and Predator films and put a lot of work into designing the creatures and the Predator homeworld, and the way they handle the score and all the effects and stuff. But then it just all falls apart on a plot level, on an effects level, just the way the movie looks, the characters, just everything does not work. The characters are like impossible to keep track of, where it's sort of like a Roland Emmerich movie, and that there are like so many of them and they all have their own roles, except none of them are interesting or distinct. They're just kind of fodder, except a lot of them don't die. Some of them will appear, they'll have their introduction and then disappear for long stretches of time, and by the time you see them again, you're like, wait, who is that character supposed to be? And you can't even keep track of their relationships to each other, because it's like a small town where everyone knows each other, and sometimes characters won't even have an introduction, and so they'll like interact with each other and they know each other. Like, wait, am I supposed to know who that is? Wait, is this guy related to this person? Does he know who this is? Wait, what? And it's just so confusing. And some of the guys like look very similar, and I thought one person was another for a while. I thought the two brothers were father and son. So it just gets really confusing, and it shouldn't. It's like you'd think it'd be easier to make just basic characters. Now, as for the alien and predators themselves, they're brought to life fairly well. I mean, I want to give credit to Ian White, who plays the Predator. He does a great job. If you told me it was Peter Hall from the first couple Predator movies, I would have believed you. They act very similar in this. I want to give credit to Tom Woodruff Jr., who plays the alien in this, and the Pred Alien. He's been playing the alien for a couple movies now, and he does a great job, just the way he moves, the physicality he brings to the role. It all looks pretty great. As for the alien costumes themselves, they're designed really well. They kind of go back to the Aliens design with a few little tweaks here and there. The Pred Alien looks really cool. He's a little disproportionate, but it works well enough. Unfortunately, there's a lot of times where it's like you can't really tell if they're using a costume or CGI. A lot of that's because of the lighting. Where, again, this movie is so dark, you can't really see anything that happens half the time. And sometimes movies will use darkness to cover up bad CGI. If this movie was doing it, it just covered up all the CGI, and you couldn't see anything that was happening. There are some times where you can tell it's a costume and it looks really good. There are other times where like, that looks weird. The CGI doesn't always look good. As for the Predator, I think they've basically perfected it. The only little nitpick I have is that the mandibles, maybe look a little bit big, but also, it adds a little bit character to this individual Predator. It makes him a little bit more memorable in his own way. But when I say I think they perfected it, the costume was always great, and this one looks great. But the infrared, the, invisibility, some of the special effects around it always looked very dated. This is the first one that I think holds up perfectly, where the invisibility looks good, the infrared just looks normal. I don't know why that took them so long to get right. And like the way it's like its eyes glow looks really cool. So I thought they did the Predator pretty well in this. Now the Pred Alien was, it's a cool design, but they could have done a lot more with it, where if it sort of was smarter, it thought and fought like a Predator does. And you get a tiny little bit of that where there's the shot where it kind of pulls out the spine like a Predator would, but you barely even see it, like everything in this movie. And I feel like if they leaned more into that, that would have been pretty cool. Now, this movie just uses too much CGI in general, where the face hugger and the chest burster are all completely CGI almost every time. And it just looks cartoonish, like sometimes, like especially the chest bursters, they just look cartoonish. There's a lot of like CGI backgrounds and green screens and stuff that just aren't necessary. Like the woods are real, buildings are real. It's just, why are they CGI? It doesn't look good, and it doesn't look terrible. There's a lot of CGI in this movie that looks decent. Like it looks like a video game, not like a PS2 game, or like a 2014 video game. So it doesn't look bad, but it looks fake. Now the darkness in this movie is just so weird, because it's like, I don't even know how you shoot something that dark and don't like change it immediately. Like the screen brightness itself just feels low. And when the movie isn't dark and it's like light outside, it's daytime, the lighting's all weird. It looks oversaturated, like they changed it in editing, or maybe it's the color palette. I'm not sure what it is, but it's like all the colors are way too bright and the shadows are too dark, and it just looks fake. This whole movie just like visually looks bad. I do want to briefly talk about the Predator homeworld. Now, the homeworld's only briefly in the movie, but it looks pretty cool. They put a lot of thought into designing it, went back to the spaceship from Predator 2, the pyramids from AVP, and it looks pretty great. It looks basically what you would expect the Predator homeworld to look like. The action and the kills and stuff in this movie are pretty mediocre to bad. A lot of the kills you've seen before in all the other Alien Predator movies. They don't really make it worth watching. There are a few parts where the Predator uses his laser cannon on his shoulder and just blows people's head off, and it's all CG blood, so it doesn't look great, but it was pretty funny. There's one kill with the flying disc blade or whatever it is, and it cuts a girl in half. That was awesome. That was whoa, they really went for that. That was crazy. That kill was pretty awesome. But there isn't really any one kill that makes the movie worth watching. And all the action for the first 2 acts is so dark you can't even see it. You can't really tell what's going on. And the stuff you can make out is just the Predator shooting his laser cannon at an alien once, and then it blows up, and then that's it. So even if you could see it, the action isn't that great. But when you get to the third act, this third act just carries this movie, where it's not great. It's still darker than I'd like, but you can actually see it pretty well. And the fight scenes, they're pretty good. They're a good bit of fun. You get some good, decent kills in there. And then the alien versus Predator and Pred-Alien fight was all pretty cool. Now, during this fight on the roof, they sort of went back to H.R. Giger's original designs where the alien is sort of bones and biological stuff mixed with machines, and you can't really tell where a machine ends and biology begins. And they wanted to sort of be camouflaged with pipes and machines in the background, but it doesn't really work because it's dark and you can't see it anyway. So it was an interesting idea, but they didn't really pull it off all that well. Now, there are 2 kills in this movie that break the rules. You're not supposed to kill kids, at least not on screen. You can do it implied and kind of get away with it. And you're not supposed to kill pregnant women. And they do that in this movie. And it's distasteful. You're not supposed to do it for a reason. And just like the first one, but in an even worse way, you get kind of an unsatisfying ending in that they both lose. The Predator and the Pred-Alien sort of stab each other in the chest at the same time. They kind of stand there, and then the government military comes in and drops a nuke on the whole town, and everyone died. And you got a few main characters that you don't even know they're the main characters until the end, because there are so many characters in this. But they talk to some random soldiers that find them out in the middle of nowhere. Who knows why they're there? And they're like, "You blew up the city. You killed everyone." And they're like, "We were just following orders." And then they're like, "Okay." They're chill with it. They don't even go back to "You just killed everyone, and you didn't even know that the aliens were there." Just sent out a distress signal, and then you're like, "Okay, we're nuking it. It's the only way to be sure." And then credits roll. And it's just a super dissatisfying ending where you don't really feel like there's any victory for anyone. You just got these few people here who survived, and that's it. So there's a little bit of fun towards the end. The action is pretty decent at the end. The rest of this movie, said it over and over, just fails on every single level. I think I'm going to have to give it a 4 out of 10. I almost gave it a 5 because of that third act being a little bit of fun, but really, when you come down to it and everyone gets nuked and no one wins, it's just so unsatisfying. It knocks it back down to a 4. I wanted to like this movie. I wanted it to be good, but it just wasn't. Anyway, that's all I got for Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Thanks for watching.